So if I could, Peter, a big challenge in light of everything we're talking about and starting to bring it home and land the plane here, a major challenge which was offered, a point of support for human evolution, was offered in a recent debate, Gutsa Gibbon versus Dr. Jerry Bergman. And what they say, in light of all these different creatures, they will say that the discovery of Sahelanthropus and Ardi and these Australopithecines, they say that this was a fulfilled prediction where we have this seamless progression from ape-like creatures, from Ardi to Australopithecus afarensis, to Sediba, to Habilis, up to Erectus, and then Homo sapiens. And so their assertion is, okay, creationists, what's your superior model to this? Because they're saying this is a fluid sequence connecting humans and apes as they predicted. And so do we have an equally good explanation for this? Are they overstating the assertion? Is this more so an agnostic line of evidence? Dr. Peter Line, what's the best way to engage that is my question.
Firstly, yeah, there was a big hoopla when Sahelanthropus judensis came out. I think couple of decades ago now. But I think a lot of now, because it had a femur associated with or something that wasn't published at the time, but since has been, and I think a lot of people recognize it wasn't properly bipedal anyhow. So it's kind of it's a dubious one. But my thing would be, you have the Australopithecines, an extinct primate group, that they could walk upright in some way. Extant apes can, maybe they were more efficient at it. That may well be. But the thing is, it's a huge leap from Australopithecus. Their postcranial skeleton, certainly the skull is apish, and the postcranial to Erectus, which we regard as human. Now, in between that, they've put in Homo Habilis, but I think I alluded to it. That is a phantom species. Most of the stuff belongs in Australopithecus. And if you looked at I think I've even had slides before in a previous presentation, they don't have much postcranial stuff. Some femurs they have are probably likely Erectus anyhow. The one they have is O62. Now, I was reading, I think yesterday, in the when I was reading about the Littlefoot skull, Ronald Clark, who's an evolutionist and working in South Africa, he's the founder of Littlefoot. He assigned, basically didn't say OH62 should be in Australopithecines. And the thing is, it's apish as Lucy anyhow. So they don't have any postcranial stuff that fills the gap. And all they have is these skulls, which are kind of okay. I'm just talking now. So okay, that's just my wife. Yeah. So basically, they just have these skulls, and most of them can be assigned to the Australopithecus genus, or at worst some other genus. And a lot of those brain sizes are inflated, and so they're really not a big deal. And a lot of the evolutionists use the term garbage bag or whatever to describe the species. And then you get to Homo erectus, which you regard as human. And a lot of the thing, like I said, supposedly Homo erectus to Homo heidelbergensis, but as I mentioned, now people wondering, well, if there's a modern phase that precedes Homo heidelbergensis, well, you can't really say Homo heidelbergensis is in the line, and so you have these problems stacking up. But I'm talking, but we believe, certainly as a creation, believe that all these were human, and basically, but you have one thing that is difficult, because you have pathology may confound things, like, and one of the chief things I believe is you have you have genetics, but you have environmental things like cretinism that results from goiter in goiter regions, which may have caused some funny things in these, and a lot of the low brain size and other features, which, according to evolutionists, these may mimic the things in cretinism, may mimic the primitive features in evolution. So you have that to deal as well. So it can be a challenge sometimes sorting these things out. But I don't think that there is no evolutionary progression. And you got to do, if you, I think what Jay Bergman was trying to say, was hinting at in debate, was there is no mechanism to get from, say, the Australopithecines to Homo erectus, the upright walking bipedal running stance. There's so many mutations that you would need, and to get them fixated within the the millions of years or whatever, it won't happen. It's just the improbability, the time it would take, the waiting time problem is there, and it can't be ignored. And you have also Sanford, the genetic entry problem, that our genome is not improving; it's deteriorating. And I think around 100 point mutations per person per generation. So if it was millions of years, it'd be a real problem for, you'd be seeing a lot, I don't know that, people would, yeah, survive. I don't think you could actually, you'd have life, or as we know it, if life is around millions of years, if given a current rate of point mutations and stuff like that in a genome. But anyway, that's another story. I'm not a geneticist. So.
No, those are good points. And the critics, they love their genetic entropy, that's for sure. So I thought those were a lot of excellent points. And in the article in front of me, which I thought made a lot of great points, there's a section here by Matthew Murdoch, and I think it supports what you're saying, perhaps. And so I'll read out a part of it and get your thoughts. So he says, Africanus more ape-like than Afarensis. The A. afarensis skeleton, that's AL288-1, Lucy, is geologically older, 3.8 million years, than that of the Africanus skeleton, STS-14, which is 2.4 to 2.8 million years. So he says, thus, if the age of each is accurately established and evolution from apes to humans had occurred, we would expect that the later Australopithecus, Africanus specimens would be more human-like than Australopithecus afarensis. However, the opposite is true. Africanus has a more ape-like limb proportion than afarensis. And he goes into more like that. So in a way, is that kind of a contradiction, or that would be a point that goes against their whole assertion of, well, this is a seamless, natural, fluid progression? It sounds like they're overstating their hand, Peter.
I think there's also because the redating of the South Africa remains. I think there's different groups who date them up. I think Prometheus assigned the date was at 3.6 or something million years ago. So there's a kind of competition really between Afarensis and Prometheus, as who was the early ancestor. So you have this going on as well, and there's no real clarity in an evolution story for sure. That's what, yeah.
Well, Peter,
you're right.
I think a lot of people, they take today and they make assumptions on the past. What I mean by that, if we were to ask somebody today on the street, what is an ape? What does an ape look to you? What's your definition of an ape? They're going to point to extant apes, orangutans, gorillas, bonobos, chimpanzees. But if we ask Adam, Eve, or if we ask Cain and Abel, okay, if we went back thousands of years ago in the pre-flood world and asked them, what's an ape or what's a primate? I mean, they might have a totally different answer. To them, something that is more bipedal or upright walking than what we see today could be their answer, because that's the past. That's closer to creation. There would have been, in many ways, different morphological variations expressed. It's just a thought, I think, because today a lot of people are just so against, in the creation world, bipedal apish primates. But you've shown, and I think sufficiently, that that's not something we need to fear. Okay, so I want to ask this question then, based on everything you said and what we've discussed here in this little 5-minute segment. When they say, but this is a fulfilled prediction, what we find in terms of the Australopithecines, do you agree, Peter, that is a fulfilled prediction? Or is that an impressive prediction? Because a good prediction is something that's really specific and then comes true. But I mean, predicting an upright walking apish primate in the fossil record, is that an impressive prediction to you, Peter? Can you speak to that?
Well, I don't know. Didn't they predict that you'd have a big brain first, and then that's why the Piltdown fraud happened, and that didn't work out so well. So I don't even know when. I'd have to know when was the prediction made,
Yeah.
because it's one of these things. Even if they made the prediction, it's not like sort of some big you know, calculus equation or something like that. It's
Yeah.
just an either or, one or two alternatives. So it's kind of like not a big thing to make. You know, it's sort of either the brain came first or they stood upright first. It's not. I mean, that's if man did evolve from apes, then at some stage they would have to stand up. So I don't see why is that a big prediction? That's the obvious thing that would have to happen, isn't it? So I don't really give them much credit for that at all, to
Peter,
be
did
honest.
they predict that we'd find these hominins in Africa, or was it that they found hominin fossils and then thought, okay, these are our ancestors? How did that work? Did they guess that Africa would be our home of origin, and so they started
I
looking
think it
there?
was
Or did they find stuff?
I think it was Southeast Asia first. That's why
Mm.
Dubai went to Indonesia, wasn't it? Look, found his Java man or Erectus, and was turned out to be human. So it wasn't Africa at first,
Okay.
and then it was the gravels of in England, wherever the place is, Piltdown, and then looked at other places in China and Mongolia or whatever, and also there was some the Tong skull in Africa in the
Yeah.
early days, but they didn't give it much thought. They just dismissed it as some sort of chimp or something, ape. So it wasn't sort of. I don't know that I can say it's a straightforward prediction that it was in Africa, because a lot of the explorers didn't go to Africa at first. They went to other places, it's kind of more the leakies and stuff that started probably more the African thing,
Okay. Well,
and
that's
things like that. And he was, you know, it was kind of like Lewis League. I think read they discovered the tool user that they found was the robust Australopithecus. Australopithecus always had this really nutcracker man, a really non-human skull. But then they found something else, and then he quickly changed his mind. And no, this is the tool user. That shows you how the bias that creeps in. But we don't know who the tool user was, and uh, and the thing was a lot of his Alderman tools are very simple things, and even monkeys can, when they're bashing stone randomly, can produce them. So it's sort of hard to know sometimes what, unless you find more sophisticated stuff, the hand axes and stuff like that. Um, some of these tools I don't even know how they were gotten there, and even humans could use them as a make stop. If you wouldn't carry them if you only produce them by smashing a rock together, you wouldn't carry them around. Whereas the hand axes, you may a lot more work. So yeah.
so, and those are some good points too, Peter. So when evolutionary scientists, for example, Gutsa Gibbon in her debate presentation, when they line up all of the different brain sizes, you were talking about brain sizes there, and they say, so
Yeah.
the brain sizes, they've steadily increased until you get to Homo sapiens. And so therefore intelligence has evolved with brain size. And then they connect it also with the progression of hominins, which you've already I think showcased why they overstate that. And so
I have a mini presentation on brain size, but I think it's probably too late. But yeah, but we could just talk about it.
and I'm assuming your presentation shows that. Is that largely an assertion? It's not entirely true, is it? That we have a
No.
nice progression from smaller brains to, and you're a neuroscientist, so you're the perfect guy to ask this question to.
Yeah.
If you wanted to
There you
put up
go.
a slide or two, I mean, go ahead, brother. I mean,
I'm just looking for the slide, sort of, to see if I can find where it is. I think it should be close by somewhere.
because it's definitely worth addressing, because I have had people
Yeah,
ask me and bring up that point where,
yeah,
because to some people, when you see that visually, and you see the skulls lined up, and then you also see the brain sizes lined up and compared and clustered. And then she shows overlap. You know, some people might find that to be appealing or convincing just looking at it. So that's why we're so curious as to how true that is.
I could give a quick thing. I might skip some slide, but if you want, I can give a quick thing.
Sure. Yeah, I've got it up on the screen for you, Peter.
All right. So do you want me to go?
Yeah, I think that'd be fun. Go ahead.
Okay. So evolution is a paleoanthropologist. The quote is from Ian Tattersall. He says, brain tissue is metabolic expensive. So there must have been some very considerable advantage to larger brains. Presumably the dividend was received in terms of greater intelligence, although precisely what this might have meant in terms of abilities or context remains unclear. All right. Now, selection for brain size. If humans evolved from apes, then the ape brain must have increased in size considerably, nearly a litre, and there must have been an adaptive value. That is a benefit in greater intelligence for something associated with its brain size. There have been many hypotheses suggested by evolutionists as possible selection pressures for brain size increase, that it make it more sophisticated tools for hunting, better forming alliances for social interaction, being more efficient at communicating language, better at thinking with symbols. So all sort of just stories. Now, brain size varies considerably among individuals. The brains of males are on average about 10% larger than those of females due to difference in average body size. No correlation exists between brain size and intelligence. Individuals with the smallest brains, 750 mils, and the largest brains, 2,100 milliliters, are functionally normal. That's from a textbook in anatomy and physics, Ardi Martini. And another book, The Rise of Homo sapiens, Coolidge state modern human brains vary in size from 1,100 cubic centimeters to almost 200 cubic centimeters. And there's no known correlation between brain size and intelligence, however one chooses to measure it. Now, I don't know, 1,100, I think it's below than that, but they're just putting plugs. Sometimes I plug figures out of here. Holloway just recently passed away. He was an expert on this sort of endocrinal stuff. He says, for another, there is some difficulty in suggesting that natural selection kept favoring larger brains if there's no connection between neural structures of the cortex and increasing behavior adaptation. That is, the very units which comprise a gradual increase in cranial capacity over the span of the Pleistocene cubic centimeters cannot be demonstrably linked with real difference in behavior. The modern condition where there's almost 1,000 cubic centimeter variation without behavioral difference that can be analyzed warns that in attempting to explain increase in cranial capacity during hominid evolution, some other parameters must be used. Now, based on a pooled sample, Bueller reported using the endocranial measurement, we can estimate that this UDO6 stated cranium, which we recently put member of this new species, Homo Habilis, had an endocranium model of 1,700 cubic centimeters. So that's the average human cranium is about 150 cubic centimeters. This is close to Suzhang 1, another sort of Erectus-like cranium, which dates to 125 to 105,000 years ago. The other one was dated to 200,000 to 160,000 years ago, which is 1,800 centimeters cubed. So thus, they say that the Zhujo-6 provides the earliest evidence of brain size that falls in the upper range of Neanderthals among Homo sapiens together with Zhujiang. So basically, these authors stating Homo florensis, Homo lucensis, and Homo challenge the general pattern of brain size gradually increases over time. This study also finds that hominin brain size expansion occurred at different rates across time and space. So this is not so that a linear increase in brain size. Just even evolutionists don't believe this happened. Now consider the following statement by Harry Shapiro. And although Australopithecines said to have had a cranial capacity of only a little over a litre, 1,100 cubic centimetres, and von Hindenburg more than 1,800 cubic centimetres, it would certainly not be the general judgment that Anatole France was the less intelligent. To illustrate this, Anatole France won the 1921 Nobel Prize for Literature. So having a Homo erectus brain size did not appear to disadvantage him. Here, another writer at the time, Leo Tolstoy, had a brain of 200 cubic centimeters. So there was this difference in brain size between 900 cubic centimeters between Tolstoy and France. Yes, it's hard to say who was more intelligent. And Bernard and Campbell say, in our species, size difference beyond the minimum threshold, about 1 cubic thousand centimeters, show little, if any, correlation with intelligence. To give just an example, it gives the Tolstoy and France example I just gave there, so I won't restate it. Now, so basically, hominid brain size increase over time. So basically, 20 in this one paper, they give brain size change over time. That 20 cubic centimeter brain tissue, about 156 million euros, were being added every 100,000 years. Statistic about, as this quote indicates, if human evolution is correct, then there was an expansion of brain size of hominids that worked out to about 20 cubic centimeters increase per 100,000 years. And that is regarded as a rapid change by evolution. Now, if you do the maths on this, which is sort of done, then this will have to be a few millimeter cubed or pinheads of brain tissue per generation of supposed hominid. Now, given the large variation in brain size that we have seen in humans without noticeable effect, the size of 2 chimp brains, what selective value could there possibly be in a few pinheads of brain tissue? Now, in his biological anthropology textbook, John Relford writes, there might have been a strong relationship between relative brain size and intelligence in early human evolution that is no longer in effect. And basically, they acknowledge the possibility that discussing a study, the possibility that correlation between brain size and context could be very small and still have an evolutionary impact over long periods of time. But these correlations cannot be used to make any predictions regarding IQ in living humans. That is, difference in brain size between people today are not related to difference in IQ scores. So others like these authors started speculating things were different in the past. So there might have been a strong relationship with relative brain size and intelligence in early human evolution that is no longer in effect. So that's a bit sort of a special pleading or whatever you want to call it, that happens in the past but not now. And so I got there. What happens with evolution, also the present, is a key to past. Claims that despite there being no relationship between brain size and intelligence now, somewhere there was in the past sounds like special pleading. To put all this in perspective, a huge variation in brain size exists in modern humans, said to occur without any noticeable correlation between brain size and intelligence. However, we have to believe that within the genus Homo, during the period of alleged human evolution, there was supposedly selective value for intelligence, what amounts to an increase on average of a few pinheads of brain tissue per generation. If there's no significant link between brain size and intelligence, then brain size increase would have no selective value in any alleged environment of evolutionary adaptiveness. Without any significant selective value, large brain size could not have evolved even if evolution was possible, which is not, particularly considering the high metabolic energy cost of big brains. Now, one report of normal intelligence exists for a brain smaller than Homo erectus, or most Homo erectus. Daniel Lyon was a non-retarded white watchman who worked for 20 years at the end of the 19th century in New York at the Pennsylvania railway station. He could read, write, and according to legal representative of the company that employed him, there was nothing defective or peculiar about him, either mentally or physically. He was an average weight, 65.8 kilo, below average age, 1.55 meters. After he died at age 46 in 1907 from bronchitis, his brain was removed and subject to a professional autopsy. He weighed just 6,800 grams, 624 cubic centimeters, assuming specific gravity of 1.99 for fresh brain. So basically, upon examination, while they could not attribute a small size of lion's brain to pathology or atrophy, the only unusual feature noted was that the cerebellum was near normal size, so some proportional difference there. And this suggests that volume of lion's cerebral hemispheres might have been small in for his already small brain. Indeed, the total size of his cerebral hemispheres, 300 centimeters, is 128 cubic centimeters less than the 499 cubic centimeters, which would be expected of a normal proportion brain of 624 cubic centimeters. By using a formula linking brain volume to cranial capacity, the cranial capacity of lion's cranium can be estimated at about 660 cubic centimeters or 694 cubic centimeters. That's how I calculate both methods, depending on the measured cranial capacity, estimated directly from brain mass or slight, or directly from the brain volume. Also, they've done I'll try to skip some hemispherectomy where they rip like an intractable epilepsy, where they remove a hemisphere of the entire brain, and which can give you insights into connection. So if you did that, for one, if there's a lot of things come out of it. For one, if the human mind we are our brains are just a pack of neurons, that is our mind. If you remove half the brain, and the mind is supposed to be metaphysically complex that is made up of all these parts, and so these millions of billions of neurons constitute a mind, then if you take nearly half of them away, that should split the mind or cause some sort of damage, or cause some fraction to it. Interestingly enough, you can do that, but the mind remains unified. And then one of the guys who's done work on this and is publishing a book soon, The Immortal Mind by Michael Egnor, who's a neurosurgeon, which I'm looking forward to reading. But anyhow, people who perform this sort of surgery, they say that it's amazing what these patients do, so that the brain can rewire, and their cognitive abilities are still remarkably high, given they're missing half of the brain tissue. So you miss half your brain, and you still have relatively good intelligence. In fact, so this is one 7-year-old female we just happened to. So follow up 11 years post-op. She was seizure-free and able to walk independently. She was a normal intellect applying to higher education. So that's an incredible testament to the extraordinary plasticity of the young human brain. The left side motor control relocated from the disease excised right hemisphere to anatomical parity area in the left hemisphere. This functionality did not really relocate to random cortical area, but to an area that already contained the prerequisite cellular architecture and white matter connectivity required to control movement. I don't know how you'd select for this in the environment of evolutionary adaptiveness, to be honest. There's no sort of half-brained hominids walking in savannas to select. If you had this, you just die. So it's amazing that the brain can rewire itself. That indicates incredible design redundancy, built-in intelligence, that the brain can rewire itself. And but also it shows that you can have half a brain and have normal intelligence. That's quite remarkable. So basically, maybe I'll stop there, because I've probably got the main points that I was kind of trying to get to, Don.
Very good.
I was going through it a bit fast because I wasn't part of the show, so I just by a bit fast, but I only got the slides in.
It was a bonus segment for the program. And so in your opinion, then, in light of what you're saying and presenting, why do educated evolutionists assert so confidently that brain sizes support hominin evolution? Are they uninformed, or what's the reason behind that?
Well, it's just a pledge of allegiance to Darwinism, isn't it? I mean, I worked in most of my life I spent working in the area, not in a secular research or secular university, teaching the brain, researching the brain, and it's there's no it's just that's where people go. And the model is physicalism, that you are your brain, but I think a lot of stuff is coming now. You are not just your brain. There's things. Your mind is kind of separate. There's a separate entity altogether. It's non-physical. If you don't believe me, try to describe it in the equations. Describe the mind. Describe your thoughts in equations. You'll see that the mind is actually, your thoughts are physical, and the thing is, but certainly the brain is incredibly important. All the senses, the processing power it does is incredible, and as we discussed in the series, but yeah, it's just the thing is, because they link the Australopithecines and some of these exaggerated Homo Habilis crania, which are inflated brain sizes. They linked it to Erectus, and then say, well, this shows that evolved, but Erectus represents a kind of lower range of the human spectrum. But the thing is that the Erectus shape is not indicated by brain size, because I pointed out the crania Suzhang and the other one from China. They're larger than there was 1,800 cubic centimeters. They have the Suzhang 1,800, has sort of Erectus like features, but they don't call it Erectus because by definition Erectus is small brain. So this is a circular argument. So people have to realize that, that so robusticity or the archaic features don't correlate with brain size. you get some small erectus, like a Damanesian and things like that. Although I wonder whether some of it is cretinism or something like that explains some of those really small brains we see. But I explained a human being can have certainly in the 600 cubic centimeter range still be normal, although maybe a proportion, maybe there's some abnormality there, but they can behave, think normally with that small brain. I don't believe 400 cubic centimeters, that's much too low. And you get that, it's a much, but you're getting into the pathological range there. But yes, but they have to have that, and so that's what they do. But a lot of the fossil coming out doesn't just show that linear progression, because you get these Chinese fossils, really huge brain sizes, and things like that. And then one of the most robust skulls in the fossil record, also from Australia, Land Lakes hominin 50, and basically it has 1540 cubic centimeters. So that's larger than about 200 cubic centimeters larger than the average human brain as well. So it doesn't sort of match up to a lot of the things. We don't have all the answers, but the thing is, who was it that said bones are fickle; they can sing any songs they want.
That's a great quote.
But as a brain scientist, the brain can't do that. That's where if you there's much more. The evidence inside the brain is much more greater than outside the brain. If you look at the complexity, of the tens of trillions connections in the brain that had to be created in your DNA and basically built. You have to build it first, then it has to function, integrate with everything else in the body, pretty much in one way or how to regulate. The complexity is beyond comprehension, and essentially the suggestion that somehow from bacteria with no purpose, design, or intelligence mind built us. Well, is it just a story? You believe that? Well, I can't help you. I can sell you a bridge nowhere, but I can't help you.
Well, it's true. How do these evolutionists or naturalists, how do they account for these metaphysical realities, these metaphysical truths, spirituality? We're sitting here discussing hominins, discussing chimpanzees and extant great apes. We're studying them. They're not studying us. They're not discussing us with themselves. Mm-hmm. They're not streaming over, these sophisticated computers and StreamYard and so on and so forth. We're the ones that have designed airplanes, built the space shuttle. So these are differences too, Peter. I've been wanting to ask this. I've been wanting to ask this one for a while, and before I forget, I will. Us as creationists,